I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies. With no special guest today. The old original crew's back together, just me and Matt.
Ride or die.
This is the podcast where Matt and I went and saw a movie at our local Regal Cinema Theater. And now we're going to talk about it in the parking lot in Matt's Honda Pilot. And we're going to talk about such things as, should you see this movie? Should you not see this movie? Should you bring snacks to this movie? Should you hold off on snacks? Should you stream it or should you skip it all together? And ultimately, is this a movie we're seeing in the theaters? I think that's evolving into our biggest question to answer on this podcast. So, I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy. Yes, welcome all listeners to this exciting episode. We will be reviewing a movie called Infinity Pool.
Ooh.
Yeah. They do make a reference to an infinity pool in this movie, but it's a very brief one.
Yeah, one and brief.
There are a couple famous or semi-famous people in this movie. We have the main character, Alexander, played by Alexander Skarsgård.
Of the famous Skarsgårds.
Yes. We last saw him in The Northman, I believe.
We did.
And we had Mia Goth was in this movie. We last saw her in X.
And unfortunately, we did not get out for Pearl.
We did not. But we'll make up for it by seeing whatever the next one's called.
That's true.
XXX something XXX, I think.
There it is.
Anyway, I think those are pretty much the famous people, if we can count them as famous. I think we can.
I think Skarsgård for sure. Mm-hmm. Mia, I think she's famous to us.
She's famous to us, yes.
But, why not?
Right.
Give her the props and nudge up. Put her on celebrity status.
Celebrity
right here,
status.
Right now. You
Mia
heard
Goth. You did it.
Yeah. Be on our podcast and talk about your journey.
Yes.
To being a celebrity in our eyes.
Right. Right. So that's about it. So, right?
Yeah. I don't
know. So what is this movie about? Well,
good luck.
Thank you. So we open the movie at a resort on a fictional island, and so the setting is this resort, and then there's like local people who have like some. I guess we find out they have some pretty harsh punishments for crimes, and including a lot of capital punishment. They kill you for doing various things. So that's the backdrop on which all of this plays out. So we meet a man. What's his name? John. Is his name
James.
John? James. Thank you. James and his wife Em are at this resort. He's a writer and he's seeking to have some kind of. He's looking for inspiration to write his next book. It's been a long time since his last book.
6 years.
6 years. And so they're there. We kind of, get a little flavor of the resort and of the island. And then they meet up with another couple, Mia Goth, and it plays the woman there. And her character's husband, they kind of hit it off, and they decide they're going to go outside of the resort, and so they go and have a little adventure, and then on the way back, after a full day outside the compound, if you will, James is driving the car that they've borrowed for the day, and ends up, running into someone. Killing someone, murdering them with the car. Car murder.
Vehicular manslaughter.
Right. Or homicide.
Or homicide, yeah.
I guess it was manslaughter in this case.
Yeah.
So they decide, knowing the other couple knows about the reputation for the police and what they do to people on this island, and so they're like, we can't stay here, we can't get arrested, we're just going to go and we'll deal with this situation after we're safely back in the resort. So they
stop yawning because you're making me yawn.
Yeah,
With the yawnies
sorry.
here.
We got the yawnies a little bit. So they get back to the resort and they think they're home safe, and then James gets woken up in the middle of the night by police pounding on his door, and they arrest him and his wife and take them to the police station. And that's when things start to get a little weird, because they say, well, the punishment for killing this man on the road is that you will be killed, executed by his oldest son, who's 13, who will kill you. Or you can do this process called doubling, and we'll make an exact copy of you through some means, which are not explained, other than you have to stand in some goo. We'll make an exact copy of you, looks just like you, has all your memories, and then the double will be killed, and the law will be carried out, and you'll have to pay us a lot of money. So that's what happens, and James goes through this process. They make an exact replica. He has to watch this 13-year-old kid stab his double, and then they go back to the resort after that, and the wife is freaked out. She wants to leave, and he's like, oh yeah, but the problem is he can't find his passport. So they're stuck there for a little bit longer, and then he kind of gets roped in with this whole group of people, including the couple that took them out in the first place. There's a whole group of people, and they've all gone through this process of doubling before. And so they know all about it, and they are kind of like welcoming him into the club of them. And they basically start to do these like little missions to go out and like steal things or do things and get in trouble, and end up going through the process again of doubling again. Because they get arrested, and things sort of evolve over time, and James is trying to kind of assimilate into this group and ends up doing a lot of drugs, and then eventually his wife leaves and goes without him back to wherever they're from, and so he's there with this group of people who are constantly drinking and drugging and sexing and doing various things. And so eventually he's had enough of this, and it turns out that he did know where his passport was. He had just hid it because he wanted to stay there longer. But he's had enough, and then he decides he's going to leave the island, and then the group of people conspires to stop him and bring him back to the resort, to stay with them until the resort closes down for the end of the holiday, or the end of the season, I guess you would say. The rainy season is coming and the resort is not open then. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few other things that happen, but basically he has to confront his feelings on being doubled and the potential for what that means in the world, and it's a pretty weird movie. So
Very much so.
that's what I'll say about it. Todd, what's your gut reaction to Infinity Pool?
My gut reaction is that I'm torn on this movie, because I think this is such a weird idea for a movie that, like, I was into the story, even though the story kind of falls apart in some areas. But the biggest problem with this movie is pacing. Like, it was kind of slow all the time, I felt. And it made it harder to I felt like I was trying to enjoy the movie. I wasn't just enjoying it, I was trying to. Just because I think for me it definitely came down to pace. Like I thought things were pretty good in the sense of acting. Like I don't think anyone's going to get nominated for a performance in this movie, but and just the like I said, the story and the ideas of the story and this whole world they built. I was this like fake island that's like a third world country or whatever that they vacation at. I was super enthralled with the story, but the pacing just kept knocking me out of the movie. Like every time I'd get sucked back in, I'm like, well, this is interesting. Then it would be slow and awkward and weird, and I'd be like, all right, I'm back out. When's this going to be over? And that pretty much went on the whole movie. Like there'd be something that happened, and I'd be sucked back in, and I'd be like, okay, here we go. And then not 5 minutes later, I'd be like, okay, this has been too slow for me. I'm kind of out again. So, that kind of sucks. Like these weird movies that keep coming out, or maybe we should just say artistic movies. I enjoy these movies in the sense that I enjoyed I enjoyed The Northman, and I enjoyed Everything Everywhere at Once. Like these kind of weird under the radar movies have been hitting with me lately, but this one, it's just the pacing killed it for me. I also and this is a me thing, I know that maybe some people this doesn't bother, but they didn't even try to explain the doubling process in this movie at all. Like it's just understood that it can happen, and there's sometimes where that can work, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, like where they didn't explain a whole lot of the science behind what was happening, but they at least put the effort in to make you kind of sort of understand all this kind of stuff. But they didn't that was such a joy kill to me, was never learning anything. Like, how does this third world country have the ability to double people? Like, they perfected cloning essentially, and we're supposed to believe that they kept it to themselves for their judiciary system.
Right.
So, when you think about it in those terms, the whole movie falls apart. So, I mean, I'll have to say, if you're going to see this movie in theaters, you kind of need to check out the analytical part of your brain. Like, it's all about kind of the story, but then it's all about imagery. Like, this movie's all about showing weird stuff on the screen, which some people call that amazing, and they'll be like, this is a great movie. I thought it was a little gratuitous at times, and there's apparently an NC-17 version where it goes even farther. And but honestly, I kind of had an inkling going into this movie that it was kind of going to be something like this, because it's directed by Brandon Cronenberg, who's the son of David Cronenberg or something Cronenberg, who's a director, but he's famous for doing movies where special effects are through the roof and everything's bloody and stuff like that. So it looks like the apple didn't far fall from the tree in this instance. I think, unless someone fact checks me, I think he directed what's the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he's got to get to Mars and save it, and you don't know if it's a dream.
Total Recall.
Okay, yeah, I think he directed Total Recall, and I think he directed, as in the dad, directed RoboCop. Both have some strong imagery in the movies. So, as far as do I support people seeing this in theaters, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to err on the side of no. I don't think there's anything in this movie that makes me go, if you're going to see it, you have to see it in theaters. I couldn't say that with a straight face. You can, if you're kind of in this movie and you really want to see it, which it had a pretty packed theater, which is the first time in a while we've had a packed theater.
Yeah.
I would say wait for it to come out later. I don't think you get anything from the theater experience of this movie. So, yeah. So I mean, honestly, I really don't know what else to say about it. It's a weird one. If you're into the weird ones, this might be up your alley. You can wait till it streams and watch it. But if you're kind of analytical at times, like I am, you're going to leave somewhat frustrated and wishing you had a little bit more information. So I don't know. Hard one.
Yes.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, I agree with your thoughts about pacing in this movie. It definitely killed it for me. But something else that I really disliked about this movie was all of the imagery stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like image montages in a movie showing like a deranged state, like someone is in a deranged state, so you get this weird montage.
Yeah.
I don't. That doesn't do a lot for me.
It's all flash. Like,
Yeah.
there's no substance to it. It's just like,
Right.
let's throw these weird images out there, and then people can either dig it or not, I guess.
Yes. One thing I didn't mention, but I will say, this is definitely on the gory side of a movie. There's a lot of just blood and gore, as well as there's a lot of naked people in this movie. Not a lot. A lot of time is devoted
Yeah, I
to
was
people
gonna say,
being naked.
It's the same naked
It's
people.
the same
but
naked people.
it happens a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's about pacing. I was interested in this story in the beginning, and then I was like, oh, doubling, huh? What's this about? And then from there on, I really felt like the movie really fell apart. The story of the movie fell apart from there. I was no longer really interested in knowing what was going to happen. There was a lot of like bullying behavior and like just kind of belittling the main character James.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and I don't know. That's not
Bullied by rich white people.
right. That's not attractive to me as a vehicle to move the movie along. So and then you had the sex drugs montage where
It went on for a while.
it went on for quite a while. They took a drug. They burned some wood and smelled the smoke, and then an orgy broke
They
out
were off to the races.
for I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 minutes of screen time, which doesn't sound like a lot really, but that's a lot when you're sitting there watching it.
On it, like for me, it just felt like everyone in the theater together, we were all watching porn during this like 6 minutes. We all had a
Right.
shared porn experience, which is just weird.
Yes. So, who should see this movie? You know, I think if you're like a big Mia Goth fan, you probably want to check this out. If you, I don't know, if you love Alexander Skarsgård, maybe you'll check it out as well. But yeah, you have to kind of be looking for something edgy and artsy.
Yeah.
And I agree. I don't think you need to see this in the theater unless you really want like an immersive experience of like flashing lights and weird images in your face.
Yeah,
And
I was going to say, what if, because the first thing that happens on the screen is you get this warning that this can trigger like seizures
right.
because of the imagery. And I'm like, why? I don't know if you can do this, but to me, I'm like, why wouldn't you put that in the trailer? Because what if someone came tonight to see the movie and they see that sign and they do suffer from seizures and it's like, well, I guess I can't, you know, need to walk out or something.
Yeah,
That would kind of suck.
it's true. Well, anyway, yeah, I didn't really like this movie, and I don't recommend seeing it. But I did say who I thought could see it, and
You've covered your bases.
I've covered my bases. So that is where I'll leave it.
Fair. Well, down to the nitty gritty here.
Nitty gritty time.
How many mysterious rooms of goop would you give this movie, which is the only explanation you get for the doubling process in this movie.
Right.
5 being the best, because then I guess you have 5 doubles, and, that could be a party.
Yeah.
0 the worst, because then you're just all alone.
Right. Well, and I have to say this about the Room of Goop. I was really intrigued to, I wanted to watch this process happen.
Yeah.
To set it up, they take the guy's clothes away, so he's naked. Then they put a skull cap type of latex thing over his hair. And then they put this thing in his mouth that it's like a mouth opener.
Yeah.
And so he can't close his lips. And and then they put him in this room and say, put your hands up. And then they close the door and he steps into this room of ankle deep red goop. And then they start shooting in blue goop. And then they cut away and don't explain any of the...
Well, no, then they had another 4-minute just imagery montage of blinking lights.
Right.
And you can kind of see him through it, but it just I was ready for the room to just fill with goop and everything was going in his mouth. I was like, is this where we're going? And it relied too heavily, like we've already said, on just, I'm going to throw images out there and see what sticks. Because, I'm Brandon Cronenberg. I don't know.
Yes.
Look at what my dad did. Look what I can do.
Look at what I can do. Well, so not a good rating from me. I'm going to give this a 1.8 rooms of goop out of 5. Not good at all. And that's how I feel about the movie. So take that, Brandon Cronenberg.
You said 1.8?
1.8.
I'm gonna be probably just a tad higher than you, and one thing I didn't talk about, that typically this movie, and I'm not gonna explain the ending, but typically the ending that's shown in this type of movie would be an ending that pissed me off.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason I dug it, and I think it was because I could see what good old Brandon was going for.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that this is a super turbulent plane, and you've got bad passengers all around, and it's just an overall sucky flight.
Mm-hmm.
But they nailed the landing a little bit.
Okay.
So I mean, that's not going to give it that much. I mean, I'm at a 2.0.
2.0 straight up.
Yeah. And I can't stress enough how the ending of this movie is typically an ending that would bother me and stuff like that. But for some reason, I dug it, and I can't really explain it without ruining the ending. So I'm not going to.
Fair enough.
You just have to deal with it, listeners.
Yes, that's right. Take that. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we review the movie Infinity Pool. And we gave it an average rating of 1.9 rooms of goop out of 5. That's not great.
Mm-mm.
So, if you want to see an edgy, artsy film, gory, edgy, artsy film, check it out. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy it, I don't think. Except for the ending. You might like the ending.
Maybe people won't like the ending, but for some reason it landed with me. So
Todd liked it.
yeah.
So
I cannot in good conscience say go see this movie.
right.
It landed the ending.
Yeah. You could just watch the ending and be like, that's a nice shot.
There you go. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for listening to our podcast and downloading and subscribing if you do to it. And we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.